What is going on, everyone? Welcome to the new Brew podcast. My name is Jared, and today our episode is Fear of Technology, which is part of our series 1 of Fear to Teach. Now, I would like to introduce to Andrew, who will be our guest today. Say hello, Andrew.
Hello there, Jared.
Hello, Andrew, and our curator, Dr. Sandy.
Hi, how are you today?
I'm great.
Very excited about today. I'm looking forward to listening to some insight from both of you. So before we start, though, I'd just like to acknowledge country. So where I reside predominantly is in the Dakin country. So we would like to acknowledge Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as the traditional owners of Australia. We acknowledge their continuing connection to land and water and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. Over to you.
Alrighty. Well, thank you, Sandy, for that beautiful acknowledgement of country. So today we're going to interview Andrew today about certain challenges and fears of technology. Now, for all teachers, depending on their passion and enthusiasm for technology, they're going to have a certain level of fear with certain areas. And usually the common stuff can always be comfortable for certain teachers, but there's some other teachers out there that are pretty scared about the normal stuff. So we're gonna talk to Andrew today because he's been in the university tutoring for how many years, Andrew?
I'm into my 11th year now, Jared.
11 years into university.
So basically, Andrew tutored Jared in another course, and I tutored him as well on technology. And I wanted to actually just start off with some quotes that might get us going and thinking about today. So I was like just researching and finding interesting quotes and interesting things that people say. So an American journalist from the Chicago Daily, so one of the quotes I like that he's always said, and his name's Sidney Harris, is happiness is a direction, not a place. And I think that's really cool. But when you think of technology, he said this: the whole purpose of education is to turn mirrors into windows. And I think that's really powerful when we think about things like technology, because we're not looking inward anymore with technology, we're looking outward. Another one I would like to talk to about, because I quite like following bloggers on Twitter. And there's a blogger on Twitter who's called The Joyful Leader, which she calls herself The Joyful Leader. And her name's Jennifer Hogan. And she says this: the need for students to memorize statistics and facts and capitals have disappeared because Siri has learned them for us. So she's from Alabama, and she's saying basically, I think technology is changing what we need to learn and know. And she often says catchphrases like, I believe in you. And I really admire her way of thinking. So over to you, Jared. Why have you asked Andrew to be our guest?
So I'm going to go back to when I first met Andrew. I'm not sure if he remembers me or not, but I want to go back to a winter course, and it was a course about technology. And Andrew was our tutor for that course, and he got to introduce us all these technological components that we could use in our teaching. And my highlight of that course, definitely a memory of mine, I still remember it, was him bringing a 3D printer into the class. And he got to let us have a good old play. Every single one of us in the class got to have a little go at finding our little designs and getting that printed on the 3D printer. And it was an absolute joy to be a part of that course. And especially for a tech enthusiast like me, it was definitely an eye-opener. And it opens my passion up to go even further with finding more technology. So we're going to ask a question to Andrew. So Andrew, we know that you've been in the uni teaching for 11 years. How long have you been teaching overall?
Yep, I was just thinking about this today. This is my 30th year as a teacher in some shape or form, and I've taught continuously since 1991. Yeah, I've had a number of really positive experiences and some not so positive, and I think that makes you a good teacher in a lot of ways. And I always say that to my students, that I've got some really good teaching examples for you, but I've got some catastrophic failures as well. What not to do. I was a high school teacher. I initially trained as an industrial arts, a TAS teacher. And I guess the interesting thing for me starting off as an industrial arts teacher was we didn't do a lot of technology at university because there wasn't much. I studied electronics, and I studied all of those traditional subjects like drawing and engineering studies and woodwork and metalwork and all of those types of things. So there weren't any, coding or programming or, computing type courses. So you can imagine my delight when I lobbed into my first school as a first year out teacher, and they said, "Oh, your load is going to be half computing." And I said, "Well, what's that?" Absolutely no idea. And you're talking about, your topic is fear of teaching. I was petrified. And they said, "Oh, you've got a senior computing class." And I said, "Well, I don't know what that is." And so, it was a very intensive time for me. I'm trying to get a handle on all of this content knowledge that I just wasn't aware of previously.
Wow. Dive straight into the deep end. That's the worst possible introduction you can get into teaching. And sometimes people can get scared of that. Some people can just really they'll just think that that's too much of a challenge for them and think of another career, another part of teaching that part of teaching that they might have to jump to, because again, it's a new area.
It wasn't an option.
Yeah, which is another unfortunate bit. So what specialized area are you now currently teaching in university? What do you specialize in?
For most of my teaching at the moment is in the primary undergraduate program as a specialist in technology integration. So basically they wheel me into lab sessions and I show students how to teach with technology. And I also teach in the secondary program, training TAS teachers, training design and technology and industrial technology teachers. And that's where I probably do most of my 3D printing work and robotics and CAD drawing in there. And I'm spread fairly broadly. I also teach an online engineering retraining course, which is mainly pitched at the graphics side of that curriculum.
Wow.
I've been privy to a few of your open fires. Where do they fit? How do they?
A metalwork course.
Metalwork, yeah.
Yeah, so I still get to hit things with hammers and cut things up and make things. But that's been the case for my entire career. I've always had a mixed load. And we'll talk about, I guess, some specific examples of technology soon. But I've found that either area complements each other, and it's been a really interesting time.
Yeah.
And it's been good to be innovative in those areas.
Definitely. Well, it kind of reminds me of my high school progression. I was in many subjects. I even did CAD as a subject in my year 9 and 10 courses, and I had quite the software was very tricky, but I got to really enjoy exploring certain bits. I got to learn Google SketchUp and AutoCAD. So I got a very I got a good idea of the starting areas of that software, and jumping towards all the other sciences, and then I went into the teaching aspect of it. So I made that decision of becoming a teacher after my high school. So and jumping into teaching and learning that you can use all that knowledge I'm so grateful to do those kind of courses, because now I can really that opens my enthusiasm to exploring more areas.
No, that's excellent. Yeah.
Now, Andrew, I've heard I'm just gonna say I'm a bit of a car enthusiast. I enjoy bit of a rev head. I enjoy four wheels, but I heard you prefer the 2 wheels, and motorbikes. Can you talk more about that?
Sure. How much time we got here? Yeah, I grew up on a farm down in Riverina, New South Wales, and we always had trail bikes, growing up on the farm. So I had lots of freedom. And I also had lots of freedom to muck around in the shed and cut things up and pull things apart and all of that sort of stuff. So I had a really good upbringing that way. And I think that's served me well for exploring, technology as well. you just feel that it's a good thing to do.
Mm.
So, over the years, I've collected motorbikes and ridden them and met some really good people, on trips away. And I like the motorbike racing, but I also like to restore, and I've always been a restorer. And I've a particular fondness for Ducati motorcycles and just anything old as well. And I was chatting to Sandy about this the other day, actually, in another conversation. And I've actually always enjoyed the challenge of researching and finding bits and, or remanufacturing. And, so it's a thing of beauty to me, the end product, but I like the journey. I really like to do all of that stuff and meet people along the way doing it. So it's been a long term passion.
No, it's a passion. It's a hobby, and that's a good piece to have. I'm a bit of I've got a nice Mustang as my little.
Talk about how you turned up to university.
Yeah.
That's how I noticed him.
It was the introduction for me to Sandy. I rolled up in the uni car park, and that was heading to a class and was saying, who is that person? And
his car was so good.
She was like, I don't know, but he seems pretty cool.
And would you believe it? 10 minutes later, he was in my tutorial.
Yes.
So I'm one of those people, Jared, that owned all the cool cars when I was younger and sold them for nothing, and now wish I had them again.
Yes. That's they always have to kick yourself for thinking that, but that's fantastic. Like, we'll add a little question to this. What bike do you currently own now that's your favorite?
My favorite bike at the moment is a Ducati 916. It's a classic. It changed the styling and brought the whole superbike thing in, and it's a 1998 model. I rode it the other day. It's only done 21,000 kilometers from new. And it's my baby. So I'll hang on to that one. But I've got a range of other bikes, but that's the one that I like the most at the moment.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I'm hassling Andrew to teach me how to ride. That's my next goal. Is to
and
learn
it's
how to
actually
ride.
a ridiculous bike for me to own because I'm 6'1.5" and haven't got the greatest back in the world. And it's just not practical.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, I love it. Again, this is a thing we can really share and really exchange our passion, because it's a bit of a little hobby for both of us. But our real passion in the workforce is teaching. And since our series 1 here is fear to teach and fear to use technology, can you tell us, did you have any fears with technology?
Yep, absolutely. I've always been fairly capable and I could learn things fairly quickly, but I've just mentioned to you that I've been teaching for 30 years. Now let's have a little bit of a think about that. Google's been around for 15.
Wow.
And we did not have anything to back us up. So I'll give you a couple of little examples. Like when I first started teaching, I walked into my first room and it was Apple IIe. So the old green screens when floppy disks were floppy disks that you could bend. And we had dot matrix printers, which made that nice clattery noise. Mm-hmm. And we actually did have the internet, but it was a text-based service called Viatel that you can look up in your history of the internet. And we heard the handshaking of the modem, and so I was right back there at ground zero. And then shortly after, there was a second lab. Because I was a newbie, I wasn't allowed to teach in the IBM clone lab, which was XTs, and they were the old 286s. And they had MS-DOS and some basic software to start with, but then Windows came along, and we had to learn all this new stuff. And then CD-ROM drives came along, and then we had shared printer access and all this sort of stuff, and it was a whole new world. And in terms of fear of teaching, when, say, for example, Microsoft Word came along and we had these things called tables that we could put in a document, and it was like, who'd have ever thought that? Yeah. But I was of that generation that I read the book, and all of these software packages, they came with this big book or several books. And talking about fear of teaching, I didn't know how to make a table. And a student put their hand up and said, "Sir, it says I can make a table. How do I make a table?" I went, "Oh, just excuse me for a minute. I've just got to go to the staff room and get a bit of chalk." And I'd run into the staff room, be swatting, looking up, "Where's table, table, table? Where's table?" I had no idea. And I'm trying to work out how to do this damn table. And that was the way it was. We couldn't just look it up on a phone. We couldn't look it up on the internet because there was nothing. We had the book. And it leads me to another conversation I guess we can have around this. And that is, when I started, I felt really inadequate because I wanted to be this sage on the stage, knower of all things. And then within a lesson, particularly with the senior classes, like they started doing computer programming and Visual Basic came along, and I'd never done it. And I just didn't know how to cope with it because I didn't know all the answers. And so there was this gradual, and it didn't happen overnight, I can tell you, there was this gradual paradigm shift of me thinking, okay, I don't know the answer to that, but here's Betty over there who's gone home and done 5 hours programming a night every night this week, who's an absolute legend at it. It's okay for her to answer that question. And then, we started to collaborate. And over the next few years, that sort of team approach was a part of your pedagogy. And that was really confronting as a beginning teacher. And there were so many different examples of that and so many failures. Like I'd go into a room where this one happened a few years later, actually. It shouldn't have happened. But the department filtering wasn't so great back in the early days. And it was back around the time that Microsoft PowerPoint was the thing and everyone used PowerPoint. And so I thought, instant lesson, I'll take them into this computer room. And I had an extra, which was careers teaching. And I still remember this very clearly. I had 23 girls and I had some really difficult girls in that class. And so I gave them this task where, make 5 slides, research a career that you want to get into. And one particularly naughty girl decided that she wanted to be a construction worker. Well, the Google images, this was years later, so whatever the search engine was, it might have been Ask Jeeves or something like that, came up with all these naked photos of construction workers with just their helmets and, braces and that, like Manpower Australia and all of that. And of course, it was a massive stacks on, and it destroyed the whole lesson, and it was the talk of the school and all of that sort of stuff, because I simply wasn't equipped with my digital pedagogies to manage that class and to guide them in a way that was more appropriate. Okay. And that stuff used to happen, and it was all trial and error. So using technology for technology's sake, that's saying, it can be a really bad thing and a double-edged sword. So it's not the savior that it's often made out to be if it's not constructed in the right way. Over the years, I had to work really hard to be competent in a number of different areas. And I soon discovered that you can't know everything, but you have to be good at something to establish some form of credibility with your classes.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, that's the thing. It's technology, like you're saying. Floppy disks became CD-ROMs, and now it's now a download from the cloud. Like it's constantly changing, and it's always a challenge to really take a dive into that kind of understanding that the new stuff and how to incorporate that in a classroom. And I always like to stream of how I could incorporate all these big and fantastic ideas of technology. It's always the steps to get that so it supports the teachers while they're learning it. So what would you say, to add on to what you said, what would be that skill that you say everyone has to have a skill to help you progress into new technology? What would that be?
It might be one specific software package. Like it sounds really daggy to say it now, but I became a specialist in databases. And so for all my senior classes, I was a whiz with databases and the language around them and all of that. I wasn't the greatest desktop publisher in the world or, the most perfect use of a number of other packages, but I was really good at that. And then I became good at web design. So it can be something as simple as being good at a specific package. We can talk more about teaching strategies around ICTs, I guess, as well. But that was one thing I always realised early on, is that as long as you're good at something, they'll see that you're not just some dill that is making it up as they go along.
I love it.
In my PhD, there's the person I use as my theorist is Dewey, and he said back in like 1916 that teachers should learn alongside with students. And so, and I'm the same as Andrew. When I first started teaching, I used to think I had to be the gatekeeper and have to know everything. I can't.
Yep.
And this modern world, it's getting harder and harder. So I take a very different way of thinking now, and I'm more the person that will enable you and encourage you and go for it, because I don't believe I think if I keep on saying, follow me, I'm capping everyone. And I think this podcast is showing that, because I'm saying to all the pre-service teachers in their area, no, you're in charge, you run it, and I'll support you however you want to go. And I think we'll actually achieve more by teaching that way than me saying, follow me, do this, do that. I just think it's really limiting and doesn't make sense in this current world. And Dewey said it in 1916.
Yep, exactly.
And also goes back to like it's the idea of every student learns almost the same way, which is absolutely not true. Like, we need to, especially when we have this, or everyone out here now, there's programs out there that allow students to explore every single aspect of technology and their own skill towards technology. Everyone has their own kind of expertise in technology, and that's what we need to really change. It's not just one way; it's a million ways.
That's why I think social media is awesome for it, because you can go on Twitter or Instagram and follow people. You might not see them all the time, but oh yeah, that person does this and they're really good at that, so I can go and ask them a question. And I think the digital world's open up to help our classroom practice, actually.
Absolutely. Just to add to that, Sandy, and it's always a constant reminder, because you have so many people watching. And I was in a Facebook group for industrial technology teachers the other night, and it's a really good forum for sharing work and resources and so forth. And I learned a lot from it, and current practice. And there was something really simple, seemingly simple, innocuous. Someone had made a cheese platter board, and they'd laminated some timber together. This isn't a technology example, but it's illustrating the use of social media here. And there were a few positive comments and thumbs up and so forth. And I've made a comment saying, I really like the opportunity for design variation. And the person who'd made it had made a little spreader, pate spreader or something with it. And I've innocently thought, because I hadn't been in a classroom, particularly in Southwest Sydney or other areas where this was being taught, and I said, yeah, great job, awesome job. And then a couple of people came on and said, well, I won't be letting my students make a knife. And then I thought, oh yeah, of course, they could make a knife out of that, and I hadn't thought of that. And that platform allowed that level of discussion to say, hey, hang on a minute, they could just put a sharp edge on that. And I thought, yeah, okay, fair enough, I can see that.
Well, let's move to our next part of our podcast, and Sandy's going to have a few of Dr. Sandy will give us a few questions for me and you, Andrew, to discuss.
So the focus of this podcast, so Fear to Teach is our series one, but the podcast is about prac and getting ideas for our own lessons and our own classrooms. So we'll unpack those questions today. So number one, so imagine, this is for you, Andrew, for Jared.
Yep.
Imagine Jared has a year 5 and he's going on his very first prac, and he knows they're going to struggle. The kids are going to struggle. They're going to be reluctant learners when it comes to risk taking and taking with technology.
Yep.
What tips would you give Jared?
I'd try and provide them with some choices. First of all, obviously harness technology and utilize that where you think it's going to be effective. But if you give them some choices, rather than just that one, okay, we're going to do, like that example I gave, you're going to do 5 PowerPoint slides, everyone's going to do it. You mentioned, Jared, that people clearly learn in different ways, and people are more comfortable with the responses that they give using a variety of different media. and technology enables that. So it could be, creating a task where they get to view it from multiple perspectives and they have different roles. And one person might be creating a video, to give their response, and someone might be recording data and putting it on an Excel spreadsheet or something like that. So if you give them different roles and opportunities to view that content through multiple perspectives, then they may engage to a greater level. I also think that the technologies are there now to really enable collaboration in the classroom. So getting that whole, paired or group work stuff happening can often, promote engagement, particularly with technology. And it could be something as simple as Google Documents. I like the visual, so it might be, say, using Padlet, where they all have to make a post on the class Padlet, and it's visual. And, I have a little example that we do in the primary program in a course that we run there, and it, creating and you may have even done it in that winter course, where everyone had to do a little post, which was a creature from under the sea, and no pressure, but an opportunity to, make a joint response, with that technology. I think also thinking about the way that you are pitching the content that you're teaching, you might be pitching it around some sort of inquiry or problem-based issue, or, a project, so the way that you're framing the content and setting it out has a lot to do with how well the students will engage. I also think if you take the opportunity to get to know your students, that takes a little bit of time. And I was always one of those teachers, when we had a new class, it took me till about week 6 to learn everyone's names. Once you get to know students a little bit, and that's difficult to do on prac, you don't have them all of the time, but there are some big personalities, so you do get to know people in the class. Upon knowing them a little more, you're more likely to be able to pitch their instruction and their content in a way that they'll like or engage with. So yeah, I guess there are a couple of ideas there for you.
Oh, I've always liked the idea of, especially with my recent course that I did last semester. It was about bushfires, and we got to transform a traditional lesson. And me and my partner that tried this assessment, we gave that choice. We gave that direction of we've given you 4 formats of how you could explore this topic and to summarize it and to share it, and it will give the students that opportunity to find their own enthusiasm towards one of those areas. So especially,
Andrew was behind that, designing that. So if you were told you had to do one thing, because I was the tutor, I was the lab tutor, and Andrew was in charge, so I would ask him questions all the time. So for you, Andrew was just what he's explained. He actually gave that chance to you for you to have free choice. How did that feel?
Yeah, I loved it. It's the perfect way, especially with the course that pushes for us uni students to explore technology. It's the perfect assessment to set it up and for everyone to bring in such a variety of ideas into a lesson. And I especially with me with the crazy ideas, like I had VR as the first thing that popped into my head. I had a Padlet helped me with that kind of idea of sharing, and that kind of just once I knew that yes, I can incorporate all this in a certain way, that gave me that freedom to do that, and I'm pretty happy with what we've produced with that assessment there. So
and which actually leads on to the second question, because he actually upskilled his partner. So she's very strong academically with writing essays.
Right.
But not very confident with technology.
Yeah, that's
so I
wonderful.
paired them together because I knew that they would come together nicely, and then bang, bang, they both won.
Excellent.
And I had to say I had a ball watching them work together. So excellent. So moving on to question 2, because we are focusing on prank. All right, so it's quite obvious for me that Jared's good at technology and innovative and keen to try new things. But this is a classic problem, and my PhD taught me this because the pre-service teachers I talked to on my PhD, teachers are reluctant to let the pre-service teacher take over. So most places, teachers feel like that just focus on the interactive whiteboard or just focus on iPad stuff. But one of the students in my PhD, Anna, her teacher said, no, go for it, do whatever you like. And she just flipped the whole classroom with technology and taught her teacher lots of things. But a lot of teachers are a bit frightened about handing that control over to the pre-service teacher, like someone like Jared, who would be very respectful, by the way. Any tips on that, of that idea of where the classroom teacher knows Jared's going to be better at technology?
Well, I guess what we'd do there is we could continue to use those as platforms, but bring in lots of other technologies that you could utilize within those in a non-threatening, way to the teacher. So, for example, the big one, I guess, with the iPads at the moment and with COVID is QR codes, and just designing activities that would still, focus on the iPad and the use of the class set of iPads, but would incorporate some of those real world things that are happening that students can definitely relate to. And likewise with the whiteboard, launching applications and websites and simulations and so forth on there, and just embedding them in your lessons. I think that's all you can do. The only other thing would be perhaps encouraging the teacher to team teach with you, or to help out, or do some sort of shared lesson where they're doing their bit, you're doing your bit, and so forth. But unfortunately, one variable that we don't always have control over is the DNA and personality. And I will say, in the 3 high schools that I worked in, I had really different experiences in each one, and that they all had a lot to do with staffing and leadership, and the way that technology was supported particularly. So, you'll be in a school where there'll be someone totally innovative like yourself, Jared, and you'll also have to collaborate with someone whose main connection with technology is looking up their online superannuation and working out whether they can retire yet. Yeah.
If I was in that scenario as a prac teacher, I could see myself, obviously, as a first prac student, first time jumping into prac. I'd be a bit unsure into actually how much I want to input my passion and my enthusiasm to technology with the teacher. But I would be more than, once I get the familiarity with the teacher and how they work and the students, I would be more than happy to have that the conversation and the encouragement to show, like, look, this is what we're getting. This is what we're learning in our degree. We've got sources out there that encourage us to do that, to go and find these new technological components for the future students, and to at least share a little smidge of what we know. That'd be something that I'd be that'd be an outcome that I'd be like, yes, I'm happy I did that. So yeah,
absolutely.
Because Anna, who's the person I was talking about in my PhD, I wrote a journal article on it, and I presented a conference paper and so on, and I called it giving, getting back. And what I meant by that is, if we give, you always get back. So when the classroom teacher gave to Anna and said, you take control, the classroom teacher actually gained. And ironically, the classroom teacher was the technology coordinator for the school. So she already felt she had a strong skill set.
Yes. Yeah.
But Anna had a little bit more to offer. But what Anna didn't have strongly was classroom management, for example. So between them, they won. And I will say that Anna actually got a job at that school after it because of that. There was one key lesson, and it was a mixture of technology and creative arts to do with goal panning. And that was the lesson. That's why I say to people, when you're on prac, think about your teaching, because one lesson can get you a job when you graduate. And she's still at that school now. So, and she's at now executive position because I always had her because of that one lesson that you did, which is, it's not really, it's more so than that. So moving on. So I know all of us have interest in technology. I've observed a lot myself in the primary classroom, things like Minecraft, Scratch. Jared, you mentioned 3D printers is what caught your eye when you met Andrew. Mm-hmm. And things like digital storytelling, like they're amazing, fascinating things. But let's dream big. So I think in 5 years' time, maybe, or even 10 years, where do you think we're going to be going with technology? What's something that you think you can see a vision in the future? So Andrew, I know you really do enjoy researching a lot of different areas. And I admire that enormously in you. I respect someone that actually always likes to look ahead and learn. What do you predict is going to happen for us?
Well, I think, we mentioned the molecular electronics earlier, and that's sort of an area that's, developing as we speak. Basically, it relates to just the scale of things and getting down to the atomic level and building transistors and, making it microscopic, basically, even more so than what it is now. We used to talk in the early days of how many microprocessors were in the early CPUs of computers, and it was like 2.4 million microprocessors, and we couldn't understand how that could actually happen in a chip that size. And 30 years later, it's just ridiculous. I think if we're looking at technology, we used to look at the Horizon report, which isn't around anymore, and that used to forecast and try and predict where educational technologies were going to be in the horizon, and that's sort of at the end of its vision there now, and it was looking at VR and so forth, and all of that stuff's come to fruition. But where I think it will head further in the area of artificial intelligence and personalised learning. So I think there'll be algorithms for creating more personalised learning within schools, and it's already happening where data is becoming, much more closely analysed and looked at, and I think that's going to lead on to that idea of personalised learning that I talked about. I think I'm sad to say this, but I think we're going to be a little redundant in the future as well, because I think that learning simulations are also going to start to come into play a lot more than they are, and it's already happening at university level with undergraduate teachers. So I can see that happening even within 5 years in schools, where there'll be parts of courses or even whole courses that are done as simulations.
Yeah, well, that's it. Again, it's because of what we're experiencing now, especially at this time of a pandemic. Teachers really need. It's really becoming the norm of running an interface online, and which it's. I feel it's not. I don't want to look forward to that. If that's going to be the case, I will not be looking forward to that kind. I mean, I'd be excited to explore it, but again, there's so much potential with many kinds of technology that you need in a classroom, like VR. I could imagine the VR being the students' interface for using, doing their work. Like they have a headset on, they put that on, they've got all their storage of all their work is sent out into these headsets, and they can basically work multiply. Like I can see it like a full interface, like multiple applications, way to either type or draw or explore the internet. It's all going to be in that kind of like I would love to see that in this kind of interface for each student, and also the idea of incorporating senses, like the 5 senses. Especially with technology now, you never get to a certain point where you incorporate multiple senses together. Like with VR starting, like again, I love talking about VR because it's such a bleeding edge technology, and especially the potential to use it in the classroom is crazy. And they only let certain senses get something out of it. Like it's always hot, the sight and hearing. I would love to see more of either a smell or taste or touch. Sense, like Sandy was saying in our first podcast episode, it's the best way to nurture a student is through touch and smell and all these aspects of sense, but through the areas of teaching. And I think technology can have that potential to really go all out with that area of senses. So
Absolutely, it will. And also in terms of the modes that are offered to students make meaning in a number of different modes, and some research around multiliteracies, where, you know, one of the modes is gestural, a gestural modality where they actually make meaning from gesture. So, you know, to incorporate some of those other meaning-making, you know, modes and you know, through VR would be a wonderful thing.
Because one of the things I find fascinating is children less than one, through research they've worked out, can tell whether you're smiling with them fakely or you actually have a genuine smile. And I watch people now, because I've known that sort of bit of research for a long time, and I watch people and I watch what babies do to see when they see someone, to see how they respond to that person. So, because it's really interesting that little, like less than one, they can tell your personality. Fascinating. Did you want to add anything to it, Jared, with your thoughts for the future? Let's dream big.
I can talk for hours about any kind of piece of technology that can be implemented. If you mention one thing, I'll think of another thing, which is that's my thought. But I really like the vision of what I did in the class design as my assessment, and it was incorporating traditional aspects, but tweaking it so it can be catering for the future of students, especially with like the connection between the teacher and the students in regards to delivering information to them, but also keeping that kind of freedom for them to explore them together as a group, to collaborate. I'm all about collaboration in a classroom. So I always like to think having outdoor as well, like just the outdoor scenery for them to explore, because it's another environment that they can really get comfortable with, not just being stuck in a classroom. My class design had an outdoor area where it's not really something special. It's just outdoor area. It's just somewhere to where it's not going to be a temptation for them to leave the classroom. It's merely another learning area that they can in either work at or do activities or lessons with. And I can also really just implement anything that is like that'll change how we can deliver information. Like I said, VR, Minecraft, video games is another thing. Like there's ones out there where it can incorporate lots of STEM into the classroom. So I would just be fine. I'd be exploring every single piece of technology and how I could incorporate it into the classroom. And if it doesn't work, it's trial and error. I say, oh, I'll try something else. But at least I tried. And that's the kind of mentality I want when I want to start teaching. The hashtag dive in mentality. I want to dive into every area of technology and give it a crack. So
Yeah, I love it.
I saw an example this week when I was marking an assignment, Jared, and talking about delivering content in a variety of different ways. And it was a virtual gallery tour, but you as the content creator made the tour. So you'd have images that you'd collected framed on the walls, and then you'd walk around the corner, and then there was text that you'd entered, and that was written on the walls as well. So it became a little journey through this building. I'll find it and send it to you. But it was really neat. And I thought, you know how we often, you know, put things in silos, and it becomes, that technology becomes the domain of that particular subject area. And you think, oh, virtual gallery, virtual tour. Well, it didn't have to have anything to do with visual arts or anything like that. It was just a neat way of making an engaging presentation, having students wander through.
Yeah.
And likewise, when I teach robotics, I'd sometimes teach in the master's program, and I'll get these people that have come from all different areas. It's really interesting. And I'll get musicians, I'll get people studying history. I had a lawyer in my last course as well, retraining to be a teacher.
Wow.
And the history people sometimes you could see them when I wheeled out this technology, and they screwed their nose up and they said, well, we're never going to use this. I said, yeah, but I have seen it used in a history class. And, you know, we could do some coding and look at the labyrinth and, all the pyramids, the tombs and all of that, and we can navigate our way down, and we can navigate booby traps and all this sort of stuff. And so through harnessing that digital technology, they're learning content in a different way. And, and that's the challenge with all of this stuff. It's grabbing something and using it in perhaps not a way that it was originally intended.
Again, we can talk about this for hours and hours. I hope in the future for a podcast series we can definitely bring you along for more, because this stuff is just interesting and extraordinary. Because when there's people out there that want to explore that, I'm all for it. I'll go and find these people that want to do it. So yeah. So Andrew, thank you. It's been so much fun to do that. So yes, hopefully we can do another episode. So we'll move on now to Dr. Sandy, and she's going to share us Dr. Sandy's pearls of wisdom. Go ahead, Sandy.
The pod group said that, not me. So anyway, and I laugh because it's actually my PhD. It says in my PhD I talk about the idea of more experienced teachers that offer information, pearls of like a string of pearls, and they offer more information. And just when you think they've told you one bit, you can't know anymore, they give you another pearl. And they give you another pearl. So I love it. So I just want to talk about a magazine in particular. I would flag with everyone, because I really think this is the problem. I don't think journal articles at universities, for example, can keep up with this pace. So I think we need to think about, well, how we're going to keep up with pace and research and sharing ideas easily and so on. So I've been on Twitter a lot in the last 2 years, because I can see the value for me to keeping up and just enjoying sharing everyone else's journey. So I just flag with everyone. So Fee Morrison, I met her on Twitter. She's got a magazine called the STEM Education Magazine. And so it's great. So it's had 3 editions now, and they've been free so far. And I was telling Jared about them all semester, and when he finally read one, he realised how good it was. Did you?
Yes.
But in particular, because inclusion's my passion. So I wouldn't say that. I think technology is essential, and I think like things like sensory and learning and so on is essential. But what I'm always looking for is, how do we include the kid that is missing out, the reluctant learner, and so on. So, and I'm mindful that technology has a divide in terms of who has access to it. But what I want to flag from this magazine, because it's happened in every 3 editions, and I was the editor. I've had to resign because I can't fit that in and the podcast, so I had to give it away. But empathy, it's being taught through robotics. So in the first edition, I was crying as I was trying to be the editor, because they were in New York. So these teachers in New York could see the kids in not far out of New York who had no access to things. They couldn't handle it. So what did they do? They sent robots by mail to these kids' home so they could do robotics classes at home. Wow. So these kids did not have robots, like the robot. And I was just like blown away. And the teacher, it still gives me goosebumps. The teacher that was running it was in New York City. And as she was talking on Zoom and teaching everyone, you could hear the fire engines and the ambulances in the background, racing everyone to hospital with COVID, like at the peak of New York being attacked. And what does this teacher do? She looks out. And that's why that quite really resonates with me, because I always look out. When everything's not, great for me, I try not to dwell on it myself. I go, okay, things are not good, I'm going to look out and help someone else. And I think it's really powerful. But then in addition to, they did the same thing. And another story came through of empathy and teachers taking on during COVID again. And then in edition 3, which blows my mind, there's a group of researchers globally in the early childhood section. And they're helping kids, for example, one in particular is what they call a selective mute. Now, in my first year of teaching, I had a selective mute. And I taught her for a few years. And a selective mute, actually, what they say is they actually choose not to talk. And it's a really complex condition. But this child that I taught in year 1 would not talk. She would communicate with me, but would not talk. So these researchers, and one's in actually 2 are in Melbourne, they've been working with these kids like Sanika, she's at Melbourne, and they've used robots and robotic games to get them to start communicating. And that just blows my mind to think. So that idea that, wow, we're getting that exposure, we're giving kids a voice. Now the children haven't spoken like what we were, but they are speaking, just in a different mode. And it blows my mind to think about that. And so I want to flag that with everyone that, there's heart here. There's heart in this magazine. So I thoroughly recommend any pre-service teacher to find it. So the link will be on our website, the New Brew podcast, because I think this is what we're going to do. We've got to embrace times like now with COVID. What can we do to think left of field? And that's what that magazine's showing, is teachers are thinking left of field globally. So that's my pearls of wisdom today.
Lovely, Sandy. It's fantastic. As again, ladies and gentlemen, be sure to check out our website. It's thenewbrewpc.com. We're going to have lots of little pieces of resources for you to try out. And if you do enjoy them, you can always pay $10 to enjoy a little bit more. So we're going to be doing a little podcast tomorrow with Kylie on her little program she's got.
Yeah. Kylie Barrett, she's on. She is an innovator for Splat 3D. So Jared and I are going to interview her very quickly tomorrow, and then Adam Hill, he's on holidays at the moment, but he's going to do from the UK. He's going to do something for us as well. So they're going to pop on. But you're right. So
I'm very excited.
Those videos, people will have to pay $10 a month to have a look at them, because, well, it costs money to keep things like this going. So, but did you have a question, like $1 million question?
I sure do, Sandy. So, Andrew, we always like to, this is going to be a bit of a tradition for us, for our interviewees. We ask this nice little question to really let the audience know, what if money was not an option, what would you do? So if you had $1 million, Andrew, what would you spend to help with people with technology?
Pre-service teachers.
Pre-service teachers. Yes.
That is a very good question. $1 million to help pre-service teachers with technology. Unfortunately, if we went out and bought the latest robots and bits and pieces, that would disappear in time, because it becomes yesterday's news, and I think that would be money not so well spent. I'd like to see some sort of, I think universities have a role to play here, and I don't think that it's done as good as it could be at different times, and sometimes it is a lack of resources. So perhaps it could be in the area of simulations. It could be more to do with staffing and recruiting teachers from schools who are experts and, I guess, exhibit best practice, because there are some very, very creative people out there, and we just can't access them all of the time. So it's a really difficult question to answer, but it'd be something that you want to last. You'd want it to actually mean something, and there'd be some legacy behind it, and something long lasting. But I'm not entirely sure what it would be, but I think it'd be around training.
That's fantastic. This is why we brought you on board, Andrew. Is you've got the forward thinking in the future for technology and education, and that is a $1 million answer right there. I love it. Fantastic. So we're going to wrap up today for our episode 3, The Fear of Technology. I would like to thank you so much, Andrew, for joining us here today and talking about your fears and your enthusiasm for technology. And I had an absolute ball today, and I hope you did too.
No, thanks very much for having me. I've really enjoyed it, and it's it made me think about a number of different things as well in terms of my practice at the university.
Fantastic. Now I'm going to pass to Sandy just to say thank you and her words of encouragement.
Yeah. So thank you, Andrew. Really enjoyed. So I actually worked, he was my boss last semester, or sort of my boss.
I'm not your boss. No one's the boss of Sandy.
Okay. So Andrew's worked me out. All right. He's really worked me out. Okay. So in episode 1, we shared a hashtag where we were talking that idea of intelligence before emotion, and I explained why I think that when you're teaching, always put intelligence before you feel your emotions and act. Then in episode 2, we talked about that diving mentality and being a risk taker. So today I thought, okay, because I was thinking about the qualities of Jared and Andrew and just what the journey that we had so far, and I thought, you know what, I think the best hashtag for today is teamwork matters. I think that the new Brew podcast, I can't reveal too much yet until their pages are open, but I've been working this week with Jared and Tash and Kyle, and I think they're actually going to come up with brand new ideas that people have not even thought about. So I'd encourage people who are experienced to come and have a look at what they're doing. And I would also mention too that part of that program is Adrian DePrato and A School from Tomorrow, or for tomorrow, we're going to start a learning circles program with them, because the pre-service teachers have inspired them so much and that community so much that they want to actually do learning circles with us, and pretty much what we're doing now. The last thing I want to mention is I can't help myself. Hence, Andrew does know me very well already. I've marked essays for 15 years and they bore me to tears. They brought me to tears forever. So we've decided to release stickers every series. And our first series of stickers is called the Essay Series. So you can buy them off our website. And I'll just tell you 3 that, I have to be honest, as I've been marking essays, these are the comments I think as I'm marking. So one is, commas matter. Another one is, throw a comma in, because I love it, because students will just put a comma in anywhere because they just got to throw a comma in. And yeah, there's a lot more than that, actually. They're just the 2 that I'll share with you. I was told by my team I wasn't allowed to share too many with you because, yeah, we had a lot of fun. So Tash organised with them being designed. She designed them and got them printed, and they're ready to go. So on that note, I think we're done for the day. So thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Jared.
Thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Jared.
It's been an absolute ball. So, ladies and gentlemen, be sure to check out our website, and we'll stay tuned. We will be doing some extras for our Apracard Plus users for our areas of teaching. I'm going to do a nice little video of me exploring this new little gizmo that I got. It's called the Merge Cube, and I'm thinking of incorporating that with a book, which is even cooler. It's the Wonders of the Sea, I think, and it's a very good combo between technology and just quality literature. So stay tuned for that, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone else. Thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon. Thank you, everyone, so much for listening to our episode 3, Fear of Technology, for our New Brew podcast. If you want to keep in the know of what we're doing, be sure to check out our socials. It is the New Brew PC on Instagram and Twitter, and you can go and check out our website. That's www.thenewbrewpc.com. And remember, #DiveInMentality.